whatever you're doing, you got to have something that's yours.
Yeah.
It's just that, like, you need that.
Hello and welcome to Where the Living Room Used to Be, a podcast about Rhode Island's music scene.
Hey everyone, it's James. On this episode, I sit down with John Allmark, a prodigy musician that came to Rhode Island from his native England when he was a teenager. John talks about his experience with the jazz scene in our state and the huge name acts that he's performed with, including Aretha Franklin, Liza Minnelli, and Frank Sinatra. We also talk about his role as a band leader and how being a part of what's considered the longest continuously running big band in the United States came about. I hope you enjoy our conversation, and as always, please follow along on Facebook and Instagram at Living Room UTB for live photos and more from John's time in music.
So I'm from just a small town outside of Manchester in England.
Manchester, England, yeah.
A town called Stalybridge, which nobody here would have heard of for any reason. And being in the northwest of England, it's a part of the country that's very rich in brass band culture.
Okay.
To this day, and now it's a very difficult genre to explain to people from outside because although it has spread to other parts of the world, it's like a religion. Anyway.
Really?
So you go into a small, like here in this beautiful place in Blakestown. If you were to be in a place that looked very similar to this in England, there would be at least 4 or 5 brass bands in this area, consisting of 25 brass musicians.
Yeah.
Incredibly serious about what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a whole culture of brass playing in Britain that goes back, into the 1800s.
Yeah, okay.
So growing up there, used to see the town band play all the time, and my family was friends with all these people who were in the band. I always wanted to play in the town band. So when I was 8, I got my first cornet.
Okay.
For those of the people who don't know, a cornet is an instrument similar to the trumpet. It looks like a shorter version of the trumpet.
Yeah.
And actually, in English brass bands, that's the instrument they use. They don't use trumpets.
Okay.
In English brass bands. So a cornet. So I began playing a cornet when I was 8 years old. I took lessons, and my first teacher was that you got somebody out of the newspaper, basically, was a horrible person. And so it's just horrible. Just a tyrant, really. I nearly quit anyhow. And luckily,
because it was just so much.
It was just a horrible
culture.
person. Just like so, you learn as you go on. You're a kid. What do you know? Show up and be terrified. Playing oats and beans and something. And there's some punitive part to this that I didn't really I was pretty sure wasn't supposed to happen. But anyhow, luckily before I quit, I found a teacher with the local town band, the principal cornet player of the band, and it was great. And so I flourished in that environment. Mm-hmm. And so I went to music high school. I was trained. By that point, I was still playing in English brass bands, playing cornet, but I added trumpet now to my repertoire. And basically, what at school they would teach you to be a professional orchestral musician, classical musician.
Oh, okay.
And so I studied classical trumpet, and was there until it was about, when I was 15, I'd won, even before that, come to think of it, I might have been 13. I'd won a bunch of different solo competitions, and I ended up doing a tour over here. I came to the States.
Yeah.
And I was a guest soloist at Disney World, Washington, D.C., and actually with a town band here in North Kingston, of all places. But the gentleman that hosted our visit, I came over with my mother, later became my stepfather. So my mother met him, and I finished my year at high school there when I was 15, and followed her over here. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, budding orchestral trumpet player, 15 years old, show up in Rhode Island now.
Yep.
I auditioned I was accepted at Juilliard, I was accepted at Boston University, but I was 15 years old, so they decided to skip high school for me, but or the last parts of high school, because the stuff I'd done musically was pretty advanced by that point. So the way we worked it out was, my stepfather lived in South County, lived in Saunderstown actually. So I ended up going to URI because it was near to home. I'm 15 years old.
Yeah.
And that made sense for some reason. So
Yeah.
So I get to URI, and I wasn't so enamored with, the quality of the classical music. I was used to something a bit more,
Okay.
bigger or whatever, better. But so because of curiosity, there was actually kind of a small but budding jazz program there. And I said, well, what is a sign-up sheet for like the big band or something? And I said to someone, oh, you should do it. It'd be fun.
Yeah.
So I signed up for audition for the big band or something, and I just fell in love with jazz and commercial music at that point, And it was interesting because it was such a small school, so few students there, but enough that we could always get groups together and play all the time. And I was already writing, classically at that point, but then I started, getting interested running, jazz arrangements and things like that. It was always people to play stuff. So it was almost like a perfect time to be there. Not necessarily to get a degree, but to be around a lot of other people and realize that, I don't know if I want to sit in an orchestra the rest of my life. I kind of like this. It's a little more, something more creative that appealed to me. And that's how I ended up at URI. Yeah. And that's how I ended up steering my course away from classical music, which I still love and try to keep on top of, and into jazz and commercial music.
Oh, okay.
Now, it's not that long after a couple of years, they lost their accreditation. A lot of students went to Berkeley.
Yeah.
And other places, and I was working a lot.
Yeah. So URI at the time had like a full music program.
They did. The jazz studies program lost its accreditation at that time.
Oh, okay.
And those guys left, and I was gigging, so I didn't want to teach at that point. So I started working professionally.
Okay. And what was that first professional?
The first
job?
stuff we were doing. That's interesting because at URI at that time, one of the teachers there since passed away, Art Modica. He used to teach music ed, and he was a trumpet player too. But he also had a business in Newport. He used to supply an agency that he had like a swing band. Okay. They used to play in all the mansions. There's a couple of people who used to do that at that time. Mike Rucaller also, I later would hook up with and play with for many years. And so myself and a couple of other students who were younger but certainly eager started working, doing these jobs in these mansions or these swing bands. Okay. And which was a great experience at that age,
Yeah.
You take all the money, you buy as many LPs as you could. That's all we wanted to do was listen to jazz all the time. But,
oh, really? Like, what were you listening to?
That's what I was getting. I was so immersing myself in everything. It started for me was like, because I remember the first time I saw a Miles Davis album, and I had no idea what Miles Davis. It looked cool though. It looked, it's got a trumpet, and it looked. And so I remember taking this house. I remember this is still in England. I remember taking that album home. And I think it had stuff on it from Four and More and some of those things. It was probably a compilation. And I thought it was just horrible. I couldn't understand the damn. I had no idea, no basis for what it was. I have no idea what. To me, I just listened to a trumpet at that time was like, if it was all based in classical music. So everything had to be pristine and perfect and all that kind of. I had no idea what I was listening to. It's like, ironically, years later, that recording and stuff, one of some of my favorite stuff ever, but he just didn't have,
at that time,
I had no point of reference. Thought it was just like somebody making a lot of mistakes or something I didn't understand, But certainly when I was immersing myself in jazz it was like a whole new world for me. It was so much to start, but I started, I got very much into Clifford Brown. I related to Clifford Brown as an improviser and a trumpet player because he's very technical, and I had a pretty strong technical background. And from there, through Miles, Freddie Hubbard's always been my hero. That was who I've always modeled myself after, I would say the most, if anybody, but many, many musical influences like that. And that was somebody I got to meet and who helped me at some point too, was Freddie Hubbard when I was fairly young too.
Cool. Yeah, and then when you were doing these shows at the mansions, like were you still a teenager at that time?
Yeah, I was a teenager, yeah. So these are like, these things, man, it's funny because there were so many jobs at that time that were kind of like swing bands and then a bit of commercial music in them. It hadn't quite, it was still functions and weddings and things like that. The mansions were still like black tie events. They're a little hoity-toity, so they still had to be like based in society and stuff like that. And so the cool thing was you'd learn a lot of tunes, older tunes, standards and things like that. Things young players don't really get exposed to now. I mean, I'm probably the last of a generation, that learned thousands of songs, that were really useful for us to know from doing that kind of work.
Yeah.
So we played all those mansions and all those kinds of commercial venues. And anything else on the side at that point, we already started putting my own jazz things together. Anything else you could get, But by the time, I'd say, by the time I was 19, then I went on the road. I got Liza Minnelli's gig at that time, which was a pretty big gig to get at that point.
Yeah, what were you doing with her? Like you were playing in her band?
Yeah, I got to be in the band. The other trumpet player was actually from Rhode Island. The lead trumpet player was from Rhode Island, and we'd become friends. We worked together on a lot of things. And
who was that?
That was Joe Giorgiani.
Okay.
Now his brother Tony Giorgiani also had a big band. There were two big bands in Providence at that time. On Monday night, Tony Giorgiani had a band called the Jazz Odyssey, which played at Allery's on North Main Street. And Duke Blair's band, as I'm sure you're aware, was working at Bovie's Tavern in East Providence.
Yeah.
And so for myself and some of the students at URI, well, if we weren't playing, we would get into carloads on Mondays and go to both places and listen to all this music,
Yeah.
But then, bit by bit, we get to, one of us or a couple of us might get to sub on one of the bands. It was a big deal, So.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I ended up subbing on Tony Giorgiani's band, and Joe the lead trumpet player, happened to be off from the road, and we got to play together for the first time. But it began, a musical collaboration for many years. But he got me, my first real job, my first break as far as a really good gig, traveling gig like that. So I did that for a while.
Yeah.
And then, when you come back to town, the kinds of work we were doing a lot of theater work and stuff like that. So between
like playing in the pit and stuff like that.
Yeah, like stuff between PPAC and the theaters in Boston, a lot of that stuff, and a lot of shows, a lot of act shows, like the kinds of stuff like you'd see now Foxwoods Mohegan or big name acts, Aretha Franklin or Tony Bennett, whoever, all those kinds of like hundreds of these kinds of people. So luckily there was always a balance of work between theater and shows and live stuff, and then your own jazz things that you put together. So, locally there was still quite a lot going on between here and Boston, where you could stay pretty busy, and do a nice combination of work. You weren't stuck in a theater all the time. I never wanted to do that. You just have a couple of weeks here or there. That'd be great, that kind of thing.
How did you connect with the other musicians that you performed with, like the other bands? Like, what is it? Is it just like a tight knit group of
actually
people?
I think a really good example of that is that let's talk about the big band for a minute before we even talk about it. Obviously, I have a jazz orchestra.
And
at the time, this is kind of important historically in music, is that Monday night jazz or Monday night big band jazz specifically started in New York in 1966. And at that time, Thad Jones and Mel Lewis put a big band together. Mel Lewis, the drummer, Thad, the composer and cornet player, and incredible writer. And the whole point of putting the Monday night band together was in New York City, most people, if they were working, worked Tuesday through Sunday.
Okay.
All the theater shows to this day are Tuesday through Sunday.
Yeah.
Monday was kind of a dark night, but what it was considered more of anything was a networking night. This is the night where you would get out and you would meet other guys. Jam sessions, whatever it is, people would use that night to get to know everybody else.
Yeah.
So the idea of putting a big band together, which was something that even then economically would have been a difficult thing to fund in a New York club, the payoff for the musicians was you get to meet this guy, and tomorrow this guy's going to call you to sub for this show, and this guy's going to, that's how your network of performing came along.
Gotcha.
And Duke Blair started his big band. The year after that started in New York, he started it in 1967, I believe, here in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And much with the same results.
Yeah.
Where people just wanted the opportunity to play with the great, we'd all used to playing in big bands and playing swing music for dances and stuff, but to play jazz in a jazz orchestra was something that guys really liked to do, to get a chance to stretch with some play some challenging material, and also the networking ability, which it did.
Yeah.
So I, like many other people, met the people that I met through those places, through either Allery's and playing in that band at that time as they did, or in the years afterwards when I played in Duke's band. And all the time I spent at Bovie's, up to the point where Bovie's finally was where my band ended up for 17 years as well. So Monday night was a networking night more than anything else.
Yeah,
and really important to getting yourself in the landscape of whatever's going on.
Yeah. And who else have you played with? I know you have like a long list of credits.
The credits, It's funny because I think about it that often. I could put him in like some of the things I really enjoy, like Frank Sinatra. I worked with Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
That was something that was very enjoyable. Tony Bennett, I mentioned. I toured with Natalie Cole.
Yeah.
We did a lot of stuff with Barry Manilow around the millennium, which was really fun, actually. We did a lot of dates with him.
Yeah.
I actually did tours with the Buddy Rich band after Buddy had died. I turned down Buddy Rich's gig, unfortunately, because I was working with Liza, which was a more prestigious, not a jazz gig, but
Yeah.
Liza Minnelli's gig was a good money gig, and
Yeah.
looking back, I wish I hadn't. But I did tour with Buddy Rich's band.
Yeah.
When with Dave Weckland, Joan Patitucci were playing in the rhythm section. We did some tours where I played the jazz trumpet chair, which was super fun. That was nice to still get a taste of that,
Yeah.
I loved Aretha. I worked with Aretha a lot. We did all the Motown shows. I love Motown music. Temptations, the Four Tops, Stylistics, Spinners, all these groups. Worked with Lou Rawls, Sammy Davis. It is a lot. I'll remember them all in the car on the way home, but a lot of fun stuff. And in between all of that, like all professional working musicians, some of the things that forgettable.
Yeah.
Work is work.
Yeah.
I used to tell people, I used to get paid the same amount of money to work with Blackstone the Magician as I did with Aretha, and it wasn't quite the same amount of fun. So
Yeah.
yeah, we did some strange things over the years, but.
Oh, okay.
We used to back up Don Rickles a lot. It's recently passed. That was always fun. Don Rickles was a blast. We did a lot of fun gigs like that. Joan Rivers, we used to work with a lot of the comedians. Bob Newhart.
Yeah.
Like really a ton of different kinds. That's what kept it interesting too.
Yeah.
It was there were certain things you look forward to more than others.
Yeah.
But what I always tried to do, no matter what was going on work-wise, and it was always. You'd always worry about work, it always ended up working out,
Yeah.
But I always tried to have my own projects. From really, I started that as soon as I started really getting into improvising and getting more into jazz when I was at school. I was pretty much the only one that was arranging in that class that I was there, and so I started putting my own groups together.
Okay.
But I always try and pass that up. He said, "Listen, whatever you're doing, you gotta have something that's yours.
Yeah.
It's just that you need that." If the balance isn't there unless you got something of your own that's coming out, So I've always had my own smaller groups or different size groups or different types of groups. And then when I was 24 was when I actually embarked upon starting the big band, the jazz orchestra.
Yeah.
Before that time, we'd had a group actually, played for a few years around the early 90s. There was a bit of a resurgence around the early 90s. There was a couple of cool spots where Amsterdam's was on North Main Street. Danny Moretti had a Monday and a Sunday that was really cool. And we used to play the Fish Company, which is now Whiskey Republic. That was on a Tuesday. And Last Call Saloon on a Wednesday. We had a horn section called the Psychic Horns.
Yeah.
With myself, Danny Moretti, and John Wheeler, trombone players in New York now. And we had a band, the Psychic Horns. And the Psychic Horns used to play a steady Tuesday at the Fish Company. And we do Monday nights at Amsterdam sometimes.
Cool.
And that band went on for a while. And it was kind of an Art Blakey meets Maceo Parker band. It was kind of a combination of a little funky, but some straight ahead, bop too. That was a fun band. And then after that, that's when, I think, like I said, when I was about 24, I got to the stage where I subbed in a lot of bands, big bands. I like playing in big bands, but I always find myself one of those people who was sitting at the back going, "Oh man, this is my band. I would never do it like this. I would never, just do this all the time." So you should do your own band. And I thought, yeah, why not? Why not do that?
Yeah.
And interestingly, you remember Axelrod's Music downtown? Remember there used to be opposite where the piano place is, Avery, opposite Avery. Axelrod Music was there for many, many years. And there's an old guy in the basement, Gene Malone, was one of the guys in charge of music. He was in the neighborhood with my stepfather. So we'd always stop in and see him. But I was in there one time. And they used to sell stage band music, big band music and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
they were clearing all this stuff out, and they were selling all this big band music in the basement. Just around
like
the time,
music and everything?
yeah, like sets of it, these parts and stuff. So, like, I can have that for $2. I have $3 for this. So I came out of this place with piles and piles of this stuff,
Yeah.
And so I started putting a book together, for a big band. Now, realistically, thinking back, not much of that music that ended up being as useful as I thought it was going to be, but a few gems in there. But
Yeah.
I was working in Newport quite often at that point with Mike Pucala, the piano player and band leader, and there was a bit of a Newport scene going on still. And I floated the idea to him that I wanted to put a big band together. And we went to the Newport Harbor Hotel, one of the places we used to work at on Sunday afternoon, and sold them on the idea that the big band would play in the dining room on Monday nights at a certain point after the dinner service was over or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
For the summer to see how it went, And the terms of it were basically I made nothing.
Okay.
That. But I got a meal. That's right. Me and my friend, the trombone player I mentioned, played with the psychic horns. He used to come up. We used to pack up my Crown Victoria. I had an old Crown Victoria police car, and I used to cram all this gear. I got sound system, music stands, not the greatest stuff, kind of beat up, whatever I had, and then music. We'd somehow cram all this stuff into this car. Go down to Newport, wait for them to finish dinner service, set up the band, and we get a free meal. And then the band would hit, and we play, and it was so good. The band was so great, people just freaked out. And it was called the Newport Jazz Orchestra at that time. They didn't even have my own name on my own band at that point, just to get the damn thing working.
Yeah.
And we had a great summer there. The band was fantastic, and I learned pretty fast, what I wanted. I mean, the band has developed, obviously it should develop over the years, but it was just a really good band, a lot of good players. I got all the guys that I wanted to play in the band.
Yeah.
I felt were the best guys,
Like who? Who was playing?
At that time, it's funny, there's only two of us left now from the original band.
Okay.
Myself and Bob Bowlby. Bob Bowlby is my lead alto player. He was also Buddy Rich's lead alto player for many years. And looking back for Jones left. At that time, it was him. There was, who was this? I'm trying to remember everybody else. Mark Faniff, he lives in New York now. He's an alto player. He plays in New York all the time. Arnie Krakowski was in the band. He was a great local saxophone player. Rick Stepton played lead trombone with the band. He was with Buddy Rich for many years, too. I've told you before, the trumpet player, Joe Giorgiani, was my lead trumpet player back then.
Yeah.
He was in the band. Dave Ballou, who's a jazz trumpet player in New York now, he was in the band. A lot of great players went through the band.
That's awesome. And roughly what year was this?
So this would be, all right, so I would say this would have to be 1980. Yeah, 80. I'd say 89, 90, because we're coming up on 30 years. That's right. We're coming up on 30 years for the band. Yeah.
Awesome.
So that was its start. We played a summer, 3 months.
Yeah.
In Newport. Band got a lot of attention. And Newport being seasonal, though, came to the end of the season. And what do you do now? So that's when we hooked up a couple of things. We went to a club briefly in Cranston, like a sports bar, for a couple of weeks. And then we ended up speaking to the people at the Roxy, which was on Park Avenue, and lined up a deal. We ended up playing there for several years. It was a fantastic place to play.
Yeah.
And the band really did very, very well at that time. And at this time, Duke's band was playing at Bowie's, too.
Yeah.
And so there were two big bands going on.
Yeah.
We were doing really, really well. They were starting to do not as well because they've been there a long, long time. We were a younger band. And
yeah. Were you playing on Monday nights as well?
Yeah, playing on Monday nights as well. So both things went on at the same time, which I think is great. The more the merrier, But I had two singers in the band at that time. I had Sean Montero and Clay Osborne. I had singers in the band. And the band's been through many different versions. I've changed instrumentation in the band a few times. We don't do the thing with the vocalists anymore. I've changed some of stylistically what the band is now has changed a little bit. The instrumentation of the band's slightly different. We've been through different stages just to keep the thing fresh and to keep it moving.
Yeah.
It's compared to when the band first played, it was more of a traditional like Woody Herman, Buddy Rich type in your face band.
Yeah.
And really good at it.
Yeah.
Excited, Count Basie-ish. But the band now is more Well, it more mirrors what I'm into as a jazz player myself. It's more of a more modern mainstream band. It has all the elements of the other bands, but it's a bit more soloist orientated. So you get to feature
Okay.
a lot of really strong soloists within an ensemble,
Yeah.
rather than those bands are more ensemble, and that's a great thing too.
Yeah.
And every now and again, I'll pull out the other live and we'll play Night of Buddy Rich music or something for the fun of it. So
And how many members are in the orchestra?
that's 15. Currently, it's. Let me count it up so I don't make a mistake. Cause you'll get 4 trumpets. The current instrumentation, which is not a standard big band instrumentation, is 4 trumpets, 2 trombones, 4 saxes, piano, bass, drums, and myself. So that's actually 14 pieces.
Yeah. Okay.
And I have a standard big band would have 5 saxophones, anywhere from 3 to 4 trombones. And you say, well, it's only a couple people difference, but the way that you would write for an ensemble, it changes drastically. So actually, I changed the instrumentation of the band so that it would force me to make the music for the band more original to the band.
Yeah. Okay.
And I had different people writing for the band. I wrote a lot more for myself.
Yeah.
The instrumentation of the band is actually the same as Maynard Ferguson's band's instrumentations were in the 60s and 70s. Interesting. It was a slightly different size big band, yeah.
Can you talk about the writing process?
That always changes. I've always liked to work with other people's. As a band leader, you find yourself. It's almost like my band has never been a vehicle just to play my music. It's been to put together something that's fun to play, entertaining to listen to, which means covering a lot of music. So going through that stuff, I found myself reorchestrating, rewriting, rearranging other people's arrangements a lot. To build a library up of kinds of things that we want to play.
Yeah.
My process for arranging is I'll go through periods of what I'm more interested in than others, writing wise. It's hard to say. I don't have like, magic marker for that. It's like right now, most of what I'm writing is for my other group. I have an Octet, which is kind of an all-star version of the big band with 5 horns and a rhythm section, and we're doing some nice work around actually, and that's kind of an exciting. I've been writing a lot more for that. In fact, I kind of got to a stage, I think, where, as I think you're supposed to do, where you become very comfortable with who you are as a player and a writer, and it becomes more natural to sit down and say, I have no idea what I'm doing here, but I'm going to create something with this song, and then just let it happen. It just be, one time I get stuck a lot. I don't get stuck on things anymore. I can, write, improvisers are usually the best writers because obviously you're creatively coming up with something as you go along. So I don't know. So I'm finding I'm writing the best stuff I've ever written, which is what I'd hope for this time of my life. I should be playing my best too. It's interesting because I teach writing too, and it's like people have different ways that they can do it. Mm-hmm. I can't do one thing at once in life particularly well, but I can balance about five arrangements in my head usually.
Yeah.
But I'll get started on those things. So I put in all that, and I was sitting down at the piano just the other day, a couple of Horace tunes, and I'm like, just getting some ideas. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what my process is. If there's a process at all, it's been more about. I've come to it more from teaching other people that they do better with the process. I was kind of almost picking up on it myself to try and get them to be disciplined to get one thing finished. Don't just because when I was younger, when I started writing before I really knew a lot, all the enthusiasm was there, but I'd have 18 unfinished arrangements. I'd get the first part would be great, and then I'm like, shit. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so now I'm not so bad. I don't worry about things like that. But I've got like 4 or 5 Horace Silver things in my head spinning around right now that are kind of starting to arrange themselves.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's cool.
So we'll see what happens with it.
And who else is in the octet with you?
So the octet, the octet is well, let's go with the instrumentation. We got 3 saxophones, trumpet, trombone, and rhythm sections. So myself, obviously, on trumpet with Angel Subero. He's a Venezuelan trombone player, plays with the Boston Pops, and is a fantastic player. Plays bass trombone in the big band, but plays both tenor, bass, trombone, fantastic. Bob Bowlby plays baritone saxophone and the octet. Bill Vint plays alto or tenor sometimes, depending on who's there. Dino Gavoni has been playing recently with the group. Somebody else I played with for 30 years too.
Yeah.
And if out of the 3 of them, usually there. If not, Tucker Rantel is another player who's been playing with the group quite a lot too. Is a young talent. It's just ferocious tenor player.
Mm-hmm.
And the rhythm section is Dennis Hughes on piano, Brian Rizzuto on bass, Vinny Pagano on drums. Vinny I've been working with again for over 30 years on pretty much everything I've ever done.
Yeah.
And so the octet's got we've been working at this club Askew, which used to be the Fat Squirrel, yeah, Century Lounge. Yeah, we've been working at Askew. So we're trying to establish some jazz at Askew. It's a great room for it. It's fantastic. The stage, the sound is great. So we've been doing a couple octet dates a month over there. The octet started. Well, it kind of came about. I have to go back to Bowie's now when it first started. I remember there was a December of Bowie's where a guy started telling me, hey, when we get to January, I'm going to be in the theater for 3 months doing blah, 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 this guy, and this guy. And I'm like, oh, damn, we have nobody's available. I got no lead trumpet player. No.
The orchestra to continue.
Yeah, as I thought, what am I going to do? So I had a lot of small group kinds of things, but I thought, I ain't going to do that. I had a bunch of 4-horn things I've been writing, and I thought, worst comes to worst. I mean, I think people would enjoy it. So first time I couldn't put like what I considered a quality band out because lead players were all working somewhere else. Mm-hmm. I put this what would be a septet at that point into Bowie's, and we did it on some different Mondays, and people liked it a lot. Just it was a nice change of pace, and it was still sounded like it's a full ensemble.
Yeah.
And so moving forward, as we move forward past Bowie's, and now we play at the Met in Pawtucket. When it came time for a similar occurrence, and a couple times it happened, I put this time I'd expanded what I wanted to really do. I really got into my head. It took me a while to kick it around, but I was like, I really settled on this 8-piece thing.
Yeah.
And I love writing for it. So it expanded from the earlier idea of the septet, got to the octet, kicked that around, created a library, and we started using it at the Met. People loved it.
Cool.
And so from that point, now we've established some regular work with it outside of that. So that's kind of the pet project, I guess you'd say now.
But it's cool to hear how excited you are about this.
That was an exciting thing, yeah. So that's a cool thing because people in New York would kill to have those opportunities. So we may complain there's not the kind of workaround that we used to have, as we all do complain. Yeah, but I still do some pretty cool things. Mm-hmm. The Octet's a great group.
Yeah.
The big band, it's an interesting thing. It's our 30th year. The Met as a venue, well, here's the difference. The Met is a venue. It's not a club.
Yeah.
It's harder to sustain a venue because it's like saying, would you go watch, pick a name out, I don't know, your favorite singer or touring artist. Would you go to P-Pike once a month or 4 times a month to see them? No, you wouldn't. No.
Yeah.
You might go once in a while.
Yeah.
This band on a big stage with lights, and it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely a drop-off in the regularity of people going to a venue than they would to a club.
Yeah, okay.
Which is why we don't play as regularly as we used to do.
Yeah.
So kind of assessing in our 30th year what to do with the band, because I really do enjoy working there, but we'll probably do some other things outside of there too.
Yeah.
To try and get it into some smaller spaces because people miss having it kind of in their faces too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. So you kind of mentioned Deke Belair starting the big band at Bowie's, and actually, did it start at Bowie's or did it start?
No, it started somewhere else. And a couple places. Yeah, it ended up at Bowie's, which had jazz, and there were several rooms in Providence that some of the guys will tell you from the older guys will be able to tell you from the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So the names of some of those rooms, I used to hear about them all the time. Where Duke Ellington would come and play, and all kinds of people.
Like club and
Exactly, yeah.
But how did that transition come about? When
our transition with Duke,
just like when Duke was getting ready to retire.
I was interested. So we were at the Roxy. Whilst we were at the Roxy, Duke's thing was not doing so well, and I don't attribute that to that was not a competitive thing. That's one thing I found is that when you got a band, if you're for a long period of time, if you don't switch things up, people don't come as often. It was just that's what it is. It's your responsibility as a band leader to try and keep it interesting. And so remember, it's not just going to be interesting to you; it's going to be interesting to people you hope want to come and see it. So you got to take a stand back sometimes to say that. So we were at the Roxy. The Roxy, we had a great relationship with them. They sold the club, and it changed immediately, as it will with any place, depending on who's there.
Yeah.
And we didn't stay there much longer after that, and we bopped around a little bit. Whilst we were at the Roxy, John Bovey had come to me and kind of already opened the discussion of, moving forward someday you think, but it was kind of, I think we kind of always understood the band would end up at Bovey's. It just seemed to make sense.
Yeah.
Bovey's had the history, and it just seemed right, So we'd already had that discussion a few years before it happened. Then we went, when that place closed, we went when the Roxy, I said, changed hands. We went to a couple different places. We did a summer at, I think it was Shooters on the water. The place is still falling down over there, right? We played an outdoor thing in there for the summer. Okay. Then we went to the Jewelry District, the place that's the art bar now.
Yeah, okay.
Had been Tribeca and briefly became Jezebels. And the big band moved in there. And that got sold out from under us. At some point during all of this, I think I went to John Bovey and said, okay, Duke at that point was down, I think, doing once a month.
Oh, okay.
I said, why don't we go in, do the other three until Duke decides he wants to retire, and then we'll take over the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened.
Oh, okay.
So we went in there, picked up the spare dates.
Yeah.
Duke played probably... He didn't play 12 Mondays. He might have played 8 or 9 out of that year, and some the next year, and then it basically transitioned.
Yeah, okay.
And it was, we were there for 17 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And did really well there.
Yeah, and with that, I mean, that has to be one of the longest bands.
Yeah. I believe his band had gone for 40 years or something like that, 40 something.
Yeah.
I forget the exact number, but. That's ran its course, and that was a hard one to swallow,
Yeah, I mean, could you talk a little bit more about that experience of playing at Bovey's? I mean, just with so much history, and then.
Well, you do. You feel the history, It's like.
And the size of the place, and.
It was the weirdest place because there were certain sweet spots you could sit at that would sound great in that place. Because you look at the stage, if you went into that place and said, "Okay, I booked you a gig in this room, go check it out," you walk in a place and say. Oh, that's not going to work. It's like you got this little stage and the floor's there. And obviously, it kind of, for a big band, it kind of worked out because you put the saxophones on the floor.
Yeah. And
then on the stage, around the room, you got the rhythm section and the brass, which plays over their heads, which is kind of cool. And I stood in front with the rhythm section.
Yeah.
Bob's is great because I could keep all my gear downstairs in the basement. It was wonderful. Didn't have to carry stuff around anywhere. That was nice. The sound of the room. Because people could get right, as you're sitting in front of me right now, that's how close you could be to the saxophone section of Bowie's,
Yeah.
People like that. It was a very friendly place where people, it's like the old Cheers adage, right? Everyone knows your name. I guess some place where people were very comfortable being. Everybody knew everybody. And the coolest thing about it was that, Bowie's didn't have to advertise. It was, no matter where you were, if you're on a Monday night, you could say, oh, stop in Bowie's, the band's playing. Yeah. You always knew that, it was always going to be. That wasn't until the last year when things got a little iffy over there, but they'd start getting nervous and there's a storm coming and all stuff. Whatever. But you did feel the sense of the history of the place for sure. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
I was very proud to take over that gig, and in fact, we honored. I don't know if you were there. The music hall. One of our last performances there, we honored Duke. And
his induction.
and I was asked to speak, which I was glad to, but at the time I was really very proud to have taken over what he started and how much that meant to all of us.
Yeah.
That we wouldn't have had the opportunities to play as musicians if we hadn't have had that forum, if we hadn't have had that place, that melting pot,
Yeah.
I mean,
just that networking that you were talking
about. And the interesting thing about Bovis is, they used to have some bands and stuff on the weekends, but they never were able to make it into nobody ever would go see jazz there any other night. It never worked.
Oh, really? Like
it never really worked. It was like this. It was always like you flipped a switch at like about 7:30 on a Monday when its regular clientele would disappear, morphed off into the reeds or something, and the jazz people would come in, but it was such a mixed crowd, you feel welcome there. I mean, one of the things that John used to like to promote, which we keep to this day, he used to like to have high school bands come in whenever possible. You got a high school band and open up for you. They think it was the greatest thing. So we do that to this day during the summer, especially. We usually had an extra date in the summer every month, two a month. So we got the All-State Band has opened up for us a couple of times the last few years, and a couple of the better, stronger jazz programs have come in. It's nice. You feel like. Because then I remember it was like just going there, just being a college student. You're sitting there, and you're so excited, With these kids now, you have to be on stage and play the gig, before we do. So you like to see more of that. There's definitely a lull. When I started my band, I was the youngest guy in my band, and the weird thing was I was the youngest guy in my band still for about 20 years.
Okay.
So in other words, there was a huge gap. There's a huge gap of people coming up behind me that didn't seem to happen anymore.
Yeah.
And, you get occasion, where you run into somebody, but for the most part, I used to say last of a generation, but it was definitely a gap, because I always try and get new talent, and you're always got an eye open for who's really playing.
But you work as an educator now as well?
I teach privately now.
Okay.
I've been through the whole thing and done all that stuff too.
Yeah. Did you teach at any schools?
I taught at Providence College for 5 years.
Oh, okay.
I was working with athletics though, so but I had a program. I had a funk ensemble there.
Oh, really?
The whole curriculum I developed around funk and R&B, which one I love in music is that kind of music.
Yeah.
In fact, I play with the band. You've been to the Parlour. We played there for years. The Autocrats. Yeah. Which is a band I've been with for like the last 4 or 5 years, which also works at a SKU now. The Autocrats works on Tuesdays at the SKU. And so, but I taught and I had a 12-piece funk band for a few years at Providence College. In fact, we played at Bowie's. They opened up for my band a couple of times. But just a great band.
Yeah.
And one of the saxophone players in that band now I play with, who was my student, is now I work with him all the time. He plays in the Autocrats now, so it's kind of cool too.
Cool. So you're still doing the Autocrats?
Yep, we're doing the Autocrats.
And how long have you been doing that at the Parlour?
Well, they were at the Parlour. They were probably at the Parlour a couple of years before I joined the band.
Yep.
So then maybe 4 years, and they've been out of the Parlour about maybe 6 months now.
Okay.
And we've been at a SKU that time. Although we did play at the Parlour for a benefit a couple of weeks ago, which was nice to play there. Yeah. I spend a lot of time. I go to the Parlour all the time. I support the Parlour. Greg's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends hang out there and like to support the bands there. And I wish more musicians would go and support bands. I think it's one of the missing pieces of what's going on right now that I see. I sound like a grumpy old man, but it's like musicians sitting on their asses at home complaining they're not working. Well, if you go out and support somebody, there'll be more of an environment where you can work too. So
yeah,
that's my feeling. Truth of the matter is, you'll get an opportunity to play. See, what I always thought was cool about Bovis was this. What I like to think I did well with that band was we kind of brought... Rhode Island's always had an educated audience, jazz audience, because they've had some great artists through here, as you know.
Yeah.
So they've got to see a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
But if you put a bunch of people in front of a big band and you start playing the most way out shit and stuff, you'll lose them before you've had a chance to bring them in. If you get to put that and package that within something that's a little more accessible... Mm-hmm. Once you've got them, they'll listen. And you'll get them responding to things that you never thought they'd even listen to. You got to be smart about it. You know, it's you gotta work. You gotta play an audience if you wish. And that doesn't mean selling out at all, but you got to play an audience if you wish to maintain an audience.
Yeah,
you got to be mindful what people ask people what they like, engage people. You can disagree with them. It happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
But be in tune to that. I'm not so sure that jazz musicians are great at doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
no, it's something that I learned of like playing to the room, you know, and just kind of like I'm not a jazz musician, but like still playing in rock music. You got to play at a certain volume. You've got to play at a certain.
Well, it's your job.
Like,
it's your job. You're being paid for it. You know, there are opportunities for people to go out and play. Many of them to go play for. You want to promote your own concert where you can do anything you want. Then you have to go for it. But it's your job. But the thing is, I always believe I got a responsibility to my my fellow musicians. I try and create an environment where you can come in and do your thing because I've handled it well, and I hope you do the same thing for me, It's like, and I think jazz musicians lose track of that sometimes. They get into that, starving artist thing, with jazz. I don't even know if you're jazz musicians anymore. We're musicians, Most jazz musicians like myself spend my career playing all kinds of different music. I associate myself as a jazz musician because that's my, my passion.
Yeah.
But I'm a professional musician. That means I play, what is it, jack of all trades and master of all, I hope. So sometimes people get a little bit into
someone asks
the
you
artist
to sit in on a different genre of music. You're like, sure. What's
what
key is this in?
Well, that's part of your job. You have to learn how to do things, and if you're going to learn how to do it, learn how to do it well.
Yeah.
That's what my theory about starting an ensemble for college musicians that had to do with learning funk and R&B. And soul and that kind of stuff. Is everybody's got their own garage band around that age, but no one's taught them what makes pop music work, or blues, or R&B. How do these things work together? How does a drum on a bass part lock up together? How does that guitar thing? How does James Brown's rhythm sections make a groove happen so that people want to move? What is it that makes that happen? And if you bring young people in and show them piece by piece how those bits fit together, it blows their mind.
Yeah, okay. So you break it down to that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think that's what you have to do with any type of music. I mean, jazz can be difficult to bring to people for obvious reasons. It can be a bit over some people's heads. It's almost like there's a certain amount of understanding. It's almost like you need to hand out a flyer. You read this first, like the disclaimer. Yeah. But when people see good jazz musicians perform together, they start to pick up on the interaction that's going on.
Okay.
And rather than if they were just listening to an audio recording where they wouldn't have that perspective, they might listen to something and say, I like the sound of that. But when they see, especially when they see a large band, which has got such power, but also so much finesse too. But when they see that in real time, but they see, man, there's tenor players playing this so screaming fast rhythm section, looking at the way the rhythm section is interacting and rhythmically what they're picking up in a conversation, they get it. Yeah. They may not know why it's happening, but they know something's happening.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool, But by the same time, when I talk about commercial and pop music, what I felt has been missing when you get into teaching college kids is you gotta break these things down and show them on a basic level what don't discount pop music or something like these are all important art forms. They all have something that makes them work.
And who do you teach now? Like what age levels are you?
I have a couple private students. That's all. So I have a 15-year-old student who also has his own big band.
Yeah.
And is a writer, which is interesting.
What's the name of that band?
Cameron Shave.
Yeah.
He has a band he's in Bridgewater.
That's cool. And
that band has opened up for us at the Met.
Yeah.
Really good band. He's doing some good things. And he studies writing with me too. So, I mean, that's an interesting thing. There's not many people that age as interested in the same things as I was at that time. Although his path has been a bit different than mine. Yeah. There's obviously a lot of similarities at this point. So. So trying to teach him not to make some of the mistakes I made, but that's part of it.
Cool.
We'll see.
Are there studios in Rhode Island that you've recorded at?
Well, used to, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Everybody does everything at their house now. We used to work at Normandy Sound, of course, at one time. Did some nice sessions over there in the day because it was such a great room.
Yeah.
And I used to work with Dan Reddy a lot around the 80s and 90s at the time. He had Celebration Sound, which was in Pawtucket. So we used to do a lot of stuff there.
What would you say is your greatest music accomplishment?
I think what the big band, the level of excellence that the big band set in this state for that length of time, I think is pretty special when you think about it.
Yeah.
You know, when you think of a small place, obviously like Rhode Island, and you think about that they had one of the best big bands in the country.
Yeah.
Well, technically, you still do.
Yeah.
30 years I had.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool when you think about it. Yeah. You know, because to me, it's like it's evolved. It's got better as it's supposed to.
Yeah.
It's changed as I've changed, and it will continue to if I continue to do it. I think we're at a stage now where it's being taken for granted, which happens to people after a long time. You know, I don't think there's ever been the support from the state for what the band has done. I don't think there's been practically no recognition for what the band has done.
Oh, okay.
Practically nothing. The support from the press, like the Journal, over the course of 30 years, you get one story every 10 years if you're lucky. You know, it's been non-existent. And I think for a place that likes to start, I mean, Providence likes to talk itself up now. It's kind of an arts hub, you know, to do with, you know, culinary and all other kinds of things. And we look around us, and as you look around here, for instance, and see some pretty nice looking places now.
Yeah.
The way that Providence talks about supporting its local artists, and yet my experience of it with something which I know is special does not quite line up, let me put it that way. We saved jazz in Rhode Island when we took over Bovie's. You know, it was Duke's thing had pretty much run its course after, as important as that had been, it had run its course. We saved it and made it run for another 17 years, and now another, you know, bunch of years beyond that. Still, that means something, you know? And at the time you think about the arts is, you know, but the things that the Rhode Islanders don't look at, you know, in the music business, look at your theater, these beautiful theaters. You know, the way that things are with work and shows now, most of those theaters are not supporting local work anymore. I don't work in that theater anymore. You know, people like me. People coming in who make less money. You know, the business is, and business is business. I understand there are times when those things, you know, that's part of what we all prepare ourselves for in life.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to see the band have a little more opportunities through the state to say this band should be iconic in the eyes of this state in some way. We don't get invited to play at the state. We don't get invited to 20 events or say that this is an important part of music history in this state. I'm still waiting for it. It's never happened. You know, nothing. Maybe I'll get a plaque on the wall posthumously. I don't know. It's not about that to me, though. To me, it's kind of, I don't feel it's like insulting to me. I think it's insulting to all these incredible musicians that have really said something and done something really important, you know, really, really good, you know.
Yeah.
So there's my accomplishment and my bitching at the same time.
No, that's great. I mean, do you feel that it's just like jazz in general is like a separate thing from pop music that gets more attention and gets more...
Well, that's bound to be. I understand that, you know. So jazz, it's always going to be a younger generation, less and less are exposed to it. The arts in schools are talked about, but not done as well as they'd like you to believe they are. Mm-hmm. If a young consumer, really, if a consumer's not exposed to live music and it's not a good experience, or if they experience something in jazz and it's so far over their head, they'll always think that anything to do with jazz is weird, you know. So good luck, you know. We've always had those problems though, connected. But the big band I always felt was great for that. The big band was something where you didn't have to really understand it to know that something cool was happening.
Yeah,
you know?
It's very accessible.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, thanks, John. I appreciate your time.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. It's nice to pitch to somebody about it. You know.